Top Disney leaders are meeting with the state of Florida to discuss park opening. Stick with the DPI podcast as we discuss what this means and when the park will open. Hey, everybody, it's Matt with the DPI podcast. I'm going to bring on Peter here in a second, but really, we want to keep you guys up to date with what's going on in Florida, especially with Walt Disney World. So, this week, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, put together a task force aimed at looking at what's going on with opening the parks and really opening the tourist industry as a whole in the state of Florida, and really praise Disney about being ahead of the curve and talking about what's going on as far as timelines. So really what's happening right now is Universal sent out a email to their annual pass holders about what they would expect and what their feelings were on different items as far as when the parks open, how social distancing would work. So, like I said, I'm going to bring on Peter with Princesses and the Mouse here and let him talk a little bit on the Disney side about kind of if they've done anything with their pass holders.
Turn your Disney dream into a magical Disney vacation with Princesses and the Mouse Disney Travel.
So, hey, Peter, just wanted to bring you on tonight. Lots of travel industry news. So, Universal basically sent out this email to their pass holders about social distancing items. So, the wearing of masks, the not opening of anything that would be like a self-serve restaurant, indoor and outdoor queue lines, and a lot of different things like that. And I thought it was a really kind of proactive step that they took. Has Disney done anything like that for their pass holders?
Not that I've heard of. I do think what Universal did is they wanted to just solicit advice and kind of see what the feeling was on the people who, in the grand scheme of things, they've already kind of sunk their money into the park. So the first people that you could quickly get back are the pass holders and get them back into the parks. So basically, from what I understand, Universal kind of just asked, what would you expect to see? Would you be willing to return? How quickly would you be willing to return? I can tell you this about Disney, though. I don't believe they've solicited advice because Disney already has a whole bunch of different disaster plans in place. And Disney already has a protocol where basically from what I'm seeing in this protocol, Magic Kingdom would be open. There would be no parades, no nighttime shows, no character meet and greets, basically eliminating a lot of the contact between people and characters and employees and things like that. And then on top of that, you would have virtual queuing and sanitation systems. And as soon as a guest gets off a ride, that there would be essentially kind of like a wipe down along with enhanced sanitation throughout the park on all the rides and queue lines and everything else like that. In the queues, you would expect to see the same social distancing like Shanghai is already setting in place. I believe that's part of our goal here tonight. But basically what I've seen out of Florida is the Visit Florida is trying to push for the theme parks to open to Florida residents. And if they can get open to Florida residents with all these protocols in place, they can basically soft launch and test how those protocols work. Then the next step would be national guests. And I think international guests are still quite a ways away. I'm still holding out. It still seems like Disney is really, really pushing the June 1st deadline to allow national guests back. So you might see maybe by mid-May, local statewide guests allowed to return, and then maybe by June 1st. But I don't know. I guess 3 days ago, this one site analysts said that 2021 was likely when they were going to open, and so every major news network has taken that and run like it's gold right out of Iger's mouth or something. And
Yeah,
it's
the LA Times ran with that as well. It was one of the headlines that I saw yesterday that
they
the
all
park.
did. New York Times did, Washington Post. They
Yeah,
all put
yeah.
up stories about one analyst suggests 2021. In my opinion, it just seems like Disneyland and Disney World are really pushing the June idea with their guests. Shanghai's reopening seems minutes away. Paris, I believe, is reopening soon. It seems like even Hong Kong is pushing for a June 1st date. At the end of the day, Disney wants to reopen their assets. And also, the in state guest thing is great, but they don't generate a lot of revenue. They're pass holders. They're not going to stay on site. If they do, they're going to get pass holder deals. Most of them aren't going to buy dining plans or merchandise because they go there 40, 50 days a year. They might swing by, especially if they're kind of in the local Orlando to Tampa area.
Well, I also think when you're talking about, locals, one thing when you listen to some of the other podcasts is that they get fed up with having to try and plan a night out if they want to go to a Disney Springs or want to go to one of these nice restaurants that Disney has, that they have to plan this night out, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance. This might be a chance for them to go and spend some money in those restaurants and actually drive that economy because they're able to actually do something on a whim that they haven't been able to do in 6, 7 years now.
Sure. And I also saw that in this kind of this plan, this protocol that Disney has kind of activated, that Magic Kingdom would be open, Epcot would be closed, Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom would be open as well. Same idea, no shows, no parades, no meet and greets, basically rides, restaurants, and shops, and bumping up that virtual queuing. And then also the on site hotels. I saw that the Magic Kingdom area hotels would be expected to open, and all of the other ones would potentially have later opening dates. I mean, there's even talk of, I think I might be stealing thunder from what we're planning on talking about, but there's even talks of the NBA basically absorbing either Caribbean Beach or Coronado Springs, one of those kind of,
Right there next to ESPN, yeah.
Yeah. One of those ones near ESPN where kind of like the buildings are themed and isolated away from each other to where you could house a team or two of players in each one of those buildings and use ESPN. So, that would definitely throw a wrench in Disney reopening plans as well, to say, oh, well, all of our Caribbean Beach or all of our Coronado Springs reservations need to slide to a different location.
So let's move on real quick and talk about Shanghai. I'm going to take you off the screen for a second and bring up some pictures from the Shanghai park over there. But really what's going on with Shanghai is that they are doing a very soft open and going through a lot of the different protocols just to kind of get some of the steps in place. So what they're doing as far as rides and all that kind of stuff is they're going to a kind of like a one-aught each row setup. So as you can see, they've got signs on each of the cars opposite each other in each row for this roller coaster. And what it's doing is it's kind of forcing social distancing, and it's also giving, a little bit of less to sanitize after each ride. They are doing temperature checks on the way into the park right now using a thermal scan. They are requesting that park goers wear masks. This is a picture of sanitation process, it looks like prior to park open, and more sanitation process around one of the restaurants. So lots of pictures coming out. They've called their cast back. They are doing rehearsals of shows. They are doing rehearsals of parades, which kind of goes against the Florida model, which they might try and skip over that kind of stuff for the time being. So with this being done, they're also doing a QR code on the phone. Now, China has this social score system that I don't know how much it would fly here in the US, but it's really based off of, you know, if you're a good person, if you donate money, it's a lot of different things. If you have crimes against you, and a lot of stuff like that. So it's very personal and public at the same time, to where the government basically gives you like a good person credit score almost. So Peter, what do you think about using that kind of system in the US, as far as, a credit score, or, having some kind of health system score that we would be using at the parks?
Well, I do think so. Again, I look at what Shanghai's doing, and what I actually, while you were talking about that, I pulled up a little bit more about Shanghai. It looks like they've announced that they're going to be opening in early March. Like, I believe March 6th or March 7th is the date that, or not
May.
March, sorry, May, yeah, May 7th is the day that they're actually going to be allowing guests in. And they are already working on, like you said, the distancing at the security checkpoints. I kind of look at what Shanghai is doing as a model for Disney to kind of gather data, because obviously this coronavirus went through China first to open one of the Chinese locations, because they are several weeks ahead of the other locations, would allow Disney to check how these protocol works. When it comes to the States, I don't know. You're absolutely right. I just don't think that our freedoms and liberties would allow for Disney to own the rights to like my medical records and criminal history and things like that. But I definitely believe that when this reopens, Disney may require all guests to wear masks. I also believe that Disney will do temperature screenings at the gate. And quite frankly, if you're not willing to have your temperature taken with a non-contact thermometer, then what are you trying to hide is the only thing. My daughter's daycare stayed open for quite a while, and they started doing thermometer screening. That makes sense. Now with coronavirus, there are so many other people that have this that are completely asymptomatic, that don't have fevers whatsoever, but are still contagious. But if just something quick like scanning a forehead, you're definitely ripping out somebody who is symptomatic that is potentially contagious. And then if you do, I read something the other day, if two individuals with masks get together and one of them has coronavirus, and even if they are 6 feet apart and spend an appreciable amount of time talking with one another, the chance of sending it and transmitting it from that one person to the other is under like 1.5%. Right. So if you take masks, you take thermometer screenings, you sanitize stations all over the place, you sanitize rides in between usages or at regular intervals, you do a lot. You every single thing that you do decreases the chance and decreases the risk. Now, I do think that DeSantis is very gung-ho about getting his economy reopened. You look at Georgia and how just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off they went. They're basically reopening the state next week.
Yeah.
I think DeSantis is going to be a little bit more reserved in what he does. Just the foresight of developing kind of like this power team of SeaWorld and Disneyland Disney World and Universal and other, large stakeholders in the process. A lot of like the major hotel chain people were invited into this. Big restaurateurs were invited to solicit advice to this committee. But I still look at it. It just seems like everybody wants to have the ability to kind of make their own decisions. And that's something that people don't think. Like Georgia's coming under fire. Oh, you're doing it all too soon. You have the right to stay at home. that's your decision. Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
live in Georgia, you don't have to leave next Tuesday.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot. You know, you get on and you look at enough of the news, and you see all these comments on, well, you're just going to kill people by opening things up. Well, I mean, if you're worried about it, or if you're in a high risk group, you probably shouldn't go out and hug and kiss everybody the first day that they open up the state.
Right.
You gotta have some common sense, and there has to be a little bit of nuance when you talk about these things, because it isn't just black or white. There is a ton of gray area, and we got to realize that there's a ton of gray area. You know, as far as the opening of a theme park, it's going to be tricky, and it doesn't matter who does it or when they do it. It's going to be tricky. I mean, you're talking about probably capacities as low as 30% to start opening it. Um, they're going to be testing it out on their local citizens, basically, and figuring out what works, seeing if they get a spike locally, something that they contain locally, um, before they start bringing people in across the nation that are going to be flying it to and from wherever they're from. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a good idea. Now, my question would be, and this, I think this is the biggest thing right now, is for people that have May reservations that are from, say, Indiana. We're both from Indiana. And they decide, okay, we're going to open it up just to Florida guests. Are they going to cancel those reservations, or are they going to honor those reservations since they've already been made? And it, with that being said, moving further, international guests and out of state guests, as long as they have that open, are they going to have to cancel all those reservations? And how,
Yeah,
are they?
so
Go ahead.
obviously we're sitting here speculating on this, but I don't think international guests are coming back to Disney World for quite some time, or Disneyland for that matter. I think if you're planning on traveling internationally and coming to these parks, I just don't think it's going to happen. As far as the locals go, I do think that the first open is going to be to getting some people back in the parks, right, and kind of just seeing how it works and seeing how it looks, kind of like what you spoke to. But then from there, I I think if you have a reservation in May, you're really grasping at straws. I just don't think it's going to pan out for you. But I think there is like method to the madness from the very get go. From 3 weeks ago, Disney pushed out, "Hey, we're going to start making reservations in June." Um, I think if you have a reservation in June, there's optimism to be had. I do think that you're going to have to, again, I think you're going to have to take a temperature. I think you're going to have to wear a mask. I also think that you're going to have to sign a waiver, as part of your hotel check-in documents, that you recognize that COVID-19 is still relatively uncured and a potential risk. But at the same time, if I'm just speaking for me and my family, my wife and I are in our mid 30s. Our kids are healthy. We're healthy. We have no pre-existing conditions. If like people all the time go, "Hey, if Disney World reopens, would you go?" Well, 3 days ago, I booked a reservation in June to Disneyland, hoping. So
Yeah, yeah.
yes, I would go to Disney properties, because if coronavirus hits my family, the relative risk of something severe happening to us is incredibly low. And if we're sanitizing correctly and being smart and wearing masks and all these other protocols are being followed, the chance of us going and coming back no worse for the wear is incredibly high. But if you have pre-existing conditions, like, would I take grandma and grandpa with us? Hell no. I would
No.
not take grandma and grandpa with us to a reservation in June or July or anything like that.
And I think Disney's going to take some backlash because of that. Well, you're opening it up, but you're putting us at risk. No,
No, you
Disney's
chose the risk.
Disney's not putting anybody at risk. You're putting yourself at risk if you put that yourself in that situation.
Right. And that's where that waiver, I've seen a lot of Disney's likely, and Universal and everywhere else, is likely part of admitting into the park is going to be signing, recognizing that you could potentially contract coronavirus by coming in here. Do you understand that?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and again, that's the point. Like, everybody acts like the decisions being made are being made for them. You're still, I mean, you live in America. You have the right to make your decisions. If my state opens up tomorrow, I can choose to stay in my home for the next month.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
my choice.
And I think, that goes without being said, but unfortunately we have to say it.
Yeah,
You know,
I just think a lot of people don't consider it that.
yeah,
Well, if the state tells me I can leave, it's safe to leave. You get to make that choice.
yeah, you do. I've been going to the grocery store. I mean,
Yeah.
I see a couple hundred people at the Meijer I go to every time I go there. It's you do the best with what you can, and you kind of figure it out from there. And I think Disney's in a good spot to figure it out. They've done run throughs, they have ideas, they have processes. I mean, even before the parks closed, I was there the days before the parks closed, and everything that they were putting into place at that moment, you know, on a whim to try and keep up with it so that they didn't have to close the parks was amazing. They made a ton of changes to things as quick as possible at the beginning of March just to try and make it as safe for their guests as they can. And that's one thing that Disney's really going to do is when they do make this decision, they're going to make it as safe as they can for their guests. And if they have somebody come to them and suggest something, they're not against saying, "Hey, that might be a good idea. Let's try it."
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest difference because, Universal basically reached out and said, what would make you feel comfortable? And I think, DeSantis said this, Disney World he said that compared to other businesses and other plans, Disney World is far ahead of the curve in terms of understanding the steps that they're going to take and knowing how they're going to roll things out and what their action plan looks like. So I do think it's again, everybody can speculate, everybody can criticize and chastise decisions, but at the end of the day, if and when Disney World or Disneyland reopens, it is your choice whether you want to take your family or not. But I know Matt made a Disney World reservation for July. I know I have a Disneyland reservation for June, and I am very much hoping that I'm able to do it because I trust that between my own, understanding and Disney's preventions that I can still go have a great time and minimize the risk and enjoy myself in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're completely right, Peter. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Peter's with Princesses and the Mouse Disney Travel. You can find them on their Facebook page, Princesses and the Mouse Disney Travel, and he is always open to getting people booked up for the summer and beyond. 2021 with the 50th anniversary, they've got to open those dates sometime here soon. So we'll see. Well, thanks for coming on with us, Peter.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I probably got a lot of you with the hook saying that we knew a date. I think we have one pretty well narrowed down. I think a lot of people are on the same track with saying June 1st is really where everybody's pointing their finger for kind of nationwide on people coming to Disney. Now, international, we still think that's going to be pretty far out. I'm thinking it's going to be at least the end of summer, if not 2021. But we'll see what happens with Disney and with how things go. If they open up and there's not a lot of problems when they open up and they keep increasing capacity and it works well, they could fast track that and they could get more people in the park faster. But if something happens and they have to kind of pull back the reins, they're going to do that and they're going to make sure that you're safe. So trust Disney and trust your travel agent with what they're trying to do, and they're going to be the ones that are on the phone with you and trying to help you out. So I want to thank everybody for watching today, and if you do have any questions, we are the DPI podcast, and Peter's with Princesses and the Mouse Disney Travel. You guys all have a good day. Thanks now.